Hello and welcome to the next lesson, which is on writing algebraic expressions. So again, make sure you've got your algebra booklet with you and that you're open to this page, which is on writing algebraic expressions. And again, make sure to listen to the audio because you might hear something that's not actually written down. If you just turn the volume down, you might miss out on a few important points that you could have kind of noted or jotted down. Okay, so in algebra, you've done writing algebraic expressions before, particularly in year 7. You might have done it a little bit in year 8 too. So, in the previous lesson, you learnt what an algebraic expression is. So it's could be a single term like 5x squared, could be considered an expression, or 3x, or even x. It could also be a collection of terms, and the collection of terms would have to be separated by addition or subtraction signs. Notice that if it's an expression, there's no equal sign or anything like that. That would kind of turn it into an equation. So in algebra, we use letters to represent numbers. Feel free to change that to numbers if it wasn't changed already on yours. In algebra, we use letters to represent numbers or quantities which change. These we call variables. Variables is a term we tend to use in Bermuda in our school. In Australia, sometimes we use a term called pronumerals, so I like to mention that again, just in case you ever see a text or something where they use the word pronumeral instead. But variable is the most common word that we use in Bermuda. So same thing, identify the variables in the following expressions. So notice that the variables I've circled in green. So the red thing, that's not a variable. 3 is not a variable, it's a constant term. So feel free, you don't need to kind of circle this one because it's not an answer. So the variable here, that's x, that's a variable. A is an example of a variable. B is a variable. 4 and 5, don't circle them because they're not variables. Instead, they're coefficients. So coefficient of the n term, I've got no idea what that's about. So that's the coefficient of the a term. Maybe that was meant to be an a, or it was a badly drawn a. So this should instead say coefficient of the a term. So don't write coefficient of the n term. 4 is the coefficient of the a term, and positive 5 is the coefficient of the b term. Here the variables are z for this one. What would its coefficient be? It would be 1. So z, this variable in this term is y, and this one doesn't have a variable because it's a constant term. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so we've got z and we've got y as variables. Negative 2 is the coefficient of the y term. It's not positive 2, it's negative 2. 1 is the coefficient of the z term. 7, there is no coefficient because it's not multiplied by a variable. It's a constant term, and so on. So here we go. A formula is like an expression. So if you're asked to find a formula, it's similar to an expression. Sometimes a formula can be similar to an equation too, like a squared plus b squared equals c squared, or area equals length times width. That's fine. We can turn sentences into algebraic form by rewriting them using the language of mathematics. So that's what we're going to practice, turning sentences into algebraic form by using the language of mathematics. That is symbols, numbers, and letters. So if it involves a coefficient, make sure your coefficient is multiplied and appears at the front, not after the variable. It should be 2x, not x2. That's one thing to be aware of. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, so here's some examples. Rewrite the following sentences in algebraic form. No, it's going to zoom down too much, whatever. Okay, so rewrite the following sentences in algebraic form. I start with the number x, and then if I didn't write subtract 10, then change it to subtract 10. Because instead of the word takeaway, if yours still says takeaway and I haven't edited it yet, make sure you change the word takeaway 10. Because nowadays we tend, once we get kind of past primary school, we tend not to say takeaway anymore. We tend to say subtract 10. It's not impossible for you to get a question where it says takeaway, but from now on it's probably going to more likely say subtract 10. So you can change the question to, if it hasn't been already, I start with a number and then subtract 10. So start with the number x. If it says x, make sure you use the letter x, and make sure if it's lowercase x, make sure you don't use uppercase x. That's a common error. People change the case and I don't know why. So just use, if it's originally in lowercase, keep it lowercase. If it's originally uppercase, keep it uppercase and don't change the variable. If it doesn't state what letter you should use for the variable, then you can use any one that you prefer. like A if you want, or B. But if it states it, you've got to use that exact kind of variable. So I start with a number and then subtract 10. X minus 10, X subtract 10. You don't write 10 subtract X, because then it would say I subtract X from 10. Then it would say I subtract X from 10. Next one, I start with the number P. Notice it's uppercase P, so don't use lowercase p. Treble it and then add 4. So remember, treble is kind of like a British way of saying triple it. So to triple is not to cube it. The most common error is people would say P cubed. But then it would say I cube it. It wouldn't say that I treble it. It would say I cube it. To triple it just means to multiply by 3. Another common error is some people might have said P times 3 plus 4. But remember, we don't use the multiplication sign when writing expressions because they get mistaken for x's. So you should instead just use the letter P and put the coefficient at the front, because that means P times 3. In algebra, we write it as 3P instead. And then add 4, so plus 4 at the end. That's our lovely little expression. Next one, I start with the number T. Notice it's lowercase t, so don't use uppercase T. I multiply it by 5 and then subtract 19. So if it says take away on yours, still just cross it out and change the word to subtract. So I start with the number T. Common error is people would write T times 5. But remember, we don't use the multiplication sign in algebra because it gets mistaken for an X. So how should we write T multiplied by 5 instead? Have a think. That's right, we should say 5T and then take away 19. There you go, 5T, take away 19, perfect. Again, if you've got questions or thoughts or anything, just write them on the side and you can ask me later. More examples. I start with the number W. Notice it's uppercase W. Don't change it to lowercase. Divide it by 9 and then add K. Biggest error is people would write W, divide by 9 plus K. But remember, that's not the way we tend to write it in algebra. Instead of the divide sign, we use fractions. So, because fractions mean divide. So we have uppercase W, divide by 9, and then add K, plus K. That's the way we would write that. Use algebra to find the perimeter P. Notice we're going to call it lowercase p, of the shape below. So this is a formula, or more like an equation. So here's a shape. We've got length is x, the width is y. So if it helps, that one's also x and that one's also y. Perimeter means you add them all up. So you could write the unsimplified expression. Notice I use lowercase p. So the unsimplified expression would be lowercase p equals x plus and then plus y plus y. You could have written x plus y plus x plus y, no problem. X plus y plus y. That's the unsimplified expression, but then we probably should do the simplified one, shouldn't we? Because like with regular kind of like writing expressions or anything generally, if you can simplify it, you should simplify it without the question even asking you to. If it said write an unsimplified equation, that would be fine. You could leave it like this. But if it didn't state anything, assume it should be simplified. I would write the unsimplified first, just in case I made an error in my simplification, so I could get some marks. I might even get full marks for that, you never know. So write it all out. P equals x plus y, or x plus y plus x plus y. And then x plus x, it's not x squared, it's 2x. Y plus y, it's not y squared, it's 2y. So p, little lowercase p equals 2x plus 2y. You could have also written lowercase p equals 2y plus 2x. You could have also written lowercase p equals 2 brackets x plus y, because that's the same thing as 2x plus 2y when you expand it. So p equals 2 brackets x plus y, close brackets, would have also been correct. Here we go. A coin weighs x grams. How many grams will 7 coins weigh? So you would need to multiply to do that. Biggest error is people would write x times 7. But remember, in algebra, we don't use the multiplication sign. We instead go 7x. Use the coefficients. Next one, W chocolates, uppercase, are shared equally. When you see the word shared, it tends to mean divide. So that's a little clue. When things are shared out equally, it tends to mean you're going to have to divide, rather than multiply or add or subtract. So W chocolates are shared equally amongst you and 4 other friends. So how many people in total is that? That's right. So it's shared equally amongst 5 people. How many chocolates do you receive as one person? It's going to be W is the total amount of chocolates over 5. We don't write W divide by 5. Don't do that. and it's 5 because it's you and 4 others. You and 4 other friends, 5 people in total. So if there were 100 chocolates, you would get 20, 100 over 5. So uppercase W as well. Let's keep charging through this. Some more complex expressions, slightly trickier ones. Let's keep going. So formulae, that's a plural of formula. Formulae can be generated from information given in words. You may also generate them from information given by a diagram, like in the perimeter one, or even another formula. Let's see some examples of some trickier ones. A factory produces handbags by cutting and shaping rectangles by material. To make one bag, a rectangle of material which is P centimetres by Q centimetres, so P by Q, so length P, width Q or vice versa, is needed. The factory finds that an area A of material is just sufficient to make N bags. Obtain a formula for the area for A in terms of P, Q and N. So drawing the rectangle might be a really good idea. I've kind of got the answer there, give it away. So here's our dodgy rectangle. Draw your rectangle. You can call one side Q, can call the other side P. Doesn't matter if you call the longer one Q or the shorter one P, vice versa, because it doesn't say which one is longer. Remember the area of this whole thing? So the area is the inside of leather. So the area of material, assuming it's leather maybe, equals length times width. And so Q, we wouldn't write Q times P, we should write PQ. Because notice if you wrote QP, that's not quite right, because remember the way it should be written in your final answer is alphabetical order. So the area is instead PQ, alphabetical order, when you're multiplying them together. Don't write P times Q, write PQ, and keep it in alphabetical order. So to make N bags, N is a number of bags. So this much, PQ is to make one bag. So to make N bags, it's going to be N times that area. Like if you were to make 5 bags, it's going to be 5 times this. If you're going to make 7 bags, it'd be 7 times this area to make 7 bags. Because it says one bag is made from this amount of material. So the total would be NPQ. But what's kind of not quite right about this, so this is why it's important that you're listening to the audio, because how should you write your final answer for this one? This one's actually not, this one's a good little middle answer, but it's not quite the right final answer. Oh no, it is. It's because I've got my alphabetical order wrong. Don't worry, it is in alphabetical order. N comes before P, L, M, N, O, P, Q. So this is fine. So N, P, Q is correct because it's in alphabetical order. So you see, make sure, maybe write a little note that this has to be in alphabetical order. So that's why I've written PQ and why I've written NPQ. Alphabetical order is important when the variables are multiplied together. Here's another one. A square of side x centimetres, so x by x, if you're to draw your square, x by x, is removed from each corner of a rectangle measuring A by B. Draw a sketch to show this info. Pretty complicated, this one. So here is the big one, the big length here. So this whole length here is B. This whole length here is A. And so regularly it would have been a rectangle of length B by A. But what we've done is we've cut little squares out of each corner. These are meant to be squares, it's not drawn to scale of course. And the squares are x by x, x by x, x by x, x by x. Groovy. So that's why I've labelled these ones x by x. It's going to come in handy. You don't have to have written this for question A, but the reason why I've drawn these two in is because it's helpful for here. Because you're asked to find a formula for an area, A centimetres, remaining after the removal of the 4 squares. So when you think of it, beforehand, the rectangle would have been length by width. And the length was A and the width was B. So AB would have been the original area of the whole rectangle. But once you remove these 4 little squares, let's see what's removed then. So once you remove 4 little squares, what's the area of one of these little squares? That's right, it's x squared, x by x, x squared. And how many of them are there in total? That's right, there's 4 of them. So the amount of area that got cut out by these corners being cut out is 4x squared. So a formula for the remaining material, so for this funny little cross sign, would be AB, because that's the original rectangle, minus 4x squared is how you could write that. So there you go. So this is the answer to B. Area equals AB minus 4x squared. I crossed out C because you haven't really had much review of volume yet, but if you want to, because you might know a bit of volume from last year. Volume, if you folded this shape up into make a 3D box, it would have a height of x, and it would have a length of a minus 2x, because see, that whole length here is a minus x, and a minus x is a minus 2x. This length here, when you fold it up, would have been the whole length here, b minus x, so b minus 2x. So when you folded it all up, it would have been height of x times that, and you would use brackets. So you would write x brackets a minus 2x, close brackets, open brackets, b minus 2x, close brackets, and then you could expand it, but I crossed out C because, as I said, you haven't really, volume kind of tends to come back into year 9 a bit later in the year. So that's why I crossed it out for now. Okay, so feel free to write it down though if you want, or put little questions on the side if you're still not sure what I was just going on about then. Next one, example. In a triangle, PQR, here it is, triangle PQR just means PQR. So this little baby here. The side PQ, this one, has a length of x centimetres, which is pretty clear because they labelled that. Centimetres, that's not part of the variable, it's just the units, PQ. So the variable is x, represents the length. PR is twice the length of PQ. So if they said PQ is x, PR must be twice the length of x, which is not x times 2 or x squared. Twice the length means 2x. Treble the length would be 3x, but in this case it's twice the length, so 2x. PR is 2x. Write an expression for the length of PR. I just wrote it here too, 2x, and I put it on the diagram. B, QR is 3 centimetres longer, not 3 times as long, but 3 centimetres extra than PQ. PQ is x, so this one must be x plus 3, because 3 centimetres longer, not 3 times as long. So it's not 3x, it's x plus 3. Write an expression for QR. We just did it then, x plus 3. C, write an expression for the perimeter of the rectangle. Give your answer in simplest form. Perimeters are lovely because you've just got to add that plus that plus that. Easy peasy. So I would write out the unsimplified first. Here's the perimeter. 2x here plus x. So 2x plus x plus 3. So I've colour-coded it. Red plus the black x plus 3. And when you simplify this, 2x plus x is 4x. And then you've just got plus 3. Don't put the centimetres in your final answer because it's not asking for the units or anything. And it could be confused for a variable. So I tend to just write 4x plus 3. It's not asking for the units. And I think that is the end of our lesson. So again, just please make sure to have written some notes or thoughts in case you have any questions for me on your little booklet. Okay, thank you.